So in the 15 minutes that I've got with you, I want to talk about a concept called the self-driving SOC, or Security Operations Center. It's actually a thing that I think we need to actually work on as an industry. And I'll give you a couple of reasons as to why. If you think about every single time, and especially in my sort of world, I'm probably waking up every single morning and looking at yet another data breach that takes place and trying to work out why. Why has it actually happened? And if I think about every single time that we go through this notion, there's people that are sitting inside a security operations center today that are always thinking about, okay, let's go through, do the triage and try and work out what did happen. And if you think about, there's a lot of people right now that are working in one of the biggest security operations centers here in Australia, trying to do exactly that. And if you think about a lot of the times, probably 99% of the time, I'd say it's probably fair to say, every single time, eventually, we will get to a place where the SOC will sit down and work out, this is actually what happened. And they'll work at a chronological order and timeline of, this is actually how the attacker got in. They landed on one particular host, they then jumped onto another box, they escalated privileges, they then moved to a different location, they had lateral movement, they started to move all these different places, they eventually got to the data, they then exfiltrated, and this is how it actually happened. We always know about what happened after the fact. And you turn around and go, well, why can't we do something about it? Because a lot of the times we've actually got the data. The reality is we've got too much data, and we don't know how to actually work with it. But if we've got the data there, why can't we actually do something in real time? And the realistic part about it is we've got people that are actually sitting there that are actually starting to can't deal with the amount of threats and challenges that are actually out there all the time. We've got more logs, we've got more data. If you grab a whole bunch of Windows machines, you're basically grabbing your 10 events every single time someone does a login. 2 of them relate to security. We throw everything into Office 365, we get a whole bunch of information. If you're using SharePoint, there is no security information whatsoever that actually comes out of it, yet we're collecting all this information into the SOC. If you're using all these different types of applications and tools and network security solutions and endpoint solutions, every single time we're just collecting all this information. We're not doing anything on the actual endpoints or the networks themselves and actually trying to collect and process this information closer to the edge. And again, why? We're eventually getting to the answer that we want. But why don't we do something about it in real time? And the only way that we can start to think about doing that is when we start to remove humans out of the equation, first and foremost. And not to say that the machines are coming in and no one's going to have a job, but let's actually start to build a SOC where we're thinking, let's build a SOC that does not have any humans that are actually in there. Because if you think about the world right now where people are starting to build autonomous vehicles, this is probably the worst nightmare example of an autonomous vehicle, where you've got too much information in front of you. But the people that are actually really focusing on building autonomous vehicles are actually thinking about, let's build a car that does not have a human actually controlling it whatsoever. Sure, they'll put some of the niceties, the aesthetic pieces around maybe a steering wheel after the fact. Seats, because obviously we're going to be sitting in those particular cars. But all of this needs to be driven by automation. We need to think about building that device, that solution, the security operations center, in this case, the actual autonomous vehicle, without the need of someone driving it. We have to rely on the machines and the automation that's actually there to help us achieve that. And this is where we need to rely on robots. In security, we talk about security orchestration, automated response tools, which is probably a fancy way of saying robotic process automation. We have to get to a place where we can start to process all this information in real time. Because today, right now, you've got a SOC, depending on the size of the organization, it's probably going to have about 8 to 10 people working on rolling 8-hour shifts. They're constantly just going to keep on going through and triaging and looking at all this information. But what does the SOC do today? It's focusing on actually looking at the things that have bubbled up to the surface, that we say, this is actually something that's critical. Now let's break that down a little bit further. You've got a level 1 analyst that's probably sitting there and is looking to work out, is this good, bad, indifferent? And then saying, ooh, that looks interesting, let's escalate that. Think about the logic here. I've got a human who is the least capable, the least knowledgeable, not saying there's something bad with that is then trying to make out a distinction to say, let's actually escalate this to someone who's got more knowledge, who gets paid a little bit more money. That model is flawed. This is where we have to rely on automation to start to work out what are the threats and challenges that are there. But let's think about it a different way. If I've got a rule that says anything outbound port 81, block it, because it shouldn't be allowed anyway. We never investigate that. We never work out what was that actually, why did that happen in the first place? Because in theory, that could be part of a larger piece of the campaign. And this is where we have to build that SOC that relies on automation to process every single one of these events, to get to a place where, irrespective of the amount of volume of threats and challenges that we're seeing out there, irrespective of the amount of logs that are coming through, we just keep on going through that. The next thing that we need to start thinking about is how do we start to centralize all this information? Get real data, real information every single time we see something coming through. We've got solutions that are out there that don't collect the right information. Those tools are the ones that we need to think about. How do we get the right pieces and start to collect all that information together? The previous speaker talked about application security. Why are we getting some of the information and feeding that into the SOC? We try to work out how do we get better, stronger, faster every single time. The next key piece is obviously centralizing that data. Get rich data, put in the right place. Right now, we have disparate information all over the place. Start to move it around in the right locations. People always turn around and say, don't collect the information that you don't need. I say collect it all, because that gives you the full picture, the full breadth of what's going on inside your own organization. Attackers hide in plain sight. If you want to start to carve out what you don't want to look at, that's where attackers will sit. The other key piece is start to leverage the AI, the machine learning that's out there. And I'll use the terms AI and machine learning together because marketing people love to use the word AI. But at the end of the day, get the machines to start to learn from what we actually should be looking for. Program the automation around all of that. Because right now we've got 100% of our teams focusing on 100% of the problems. In theory, let's just say using the 80-20 Pareto law, get 80% of that focusing on automation. The few people we've got are focusing on the 20%, the most critical things that could cause material impact to an organization, because that's what matters. If I have to present to the board of directors about what is it that we're actually experiencing right now, they're not caring about the 80%. They're focusing on what's going to cause material impact, what will make the lights turn off in our business. They're the things I want the machines to start learning from, because we can't get enough talent. And if I went out and trained 7 billion people on the planet to be cybersecurity professionals, we would still lose this so-called war that's actually going on. And that's where we've got attackers that are simply just looking to try and work out how do they get inside our environment. Everything has got some form of value. And we need to try and work out how do we flip the economics in that one. The other key piece is start to leverage the system so they can start to get more information. The only true way that we're going to be able to achieve this is through scale and leverage of cloud. People trying to build this on-premise is never going to work, because we need the infinite compute power, the scalage, the storage of all this information to simply collect through and try and work out what's happening. And the machines can actually start to help us out. Then we can start to add and introduce the humans into the SOC. But we need to start thinking about how do we create this without the need of any humans. Because if you think about it right now, there will be a time very, very soon that we're going to end up hearing about yet another data breach. And eventually, after a couple of weeks, some time has actually been looked into it, we'll start to work out this is actually how it happened. And then we need to start working out how could we have stopped that, because there are tools out there that could have done something about it, but we need them to start to automate that process every single time. And then we get to that world where it's completely autonomous, where we could start to work and make sure that those tools are actually being leveraged every single time. Because right now, every organization, depending on most companies in Australia, have probably got anywhere between 50 to 70 different security tools that are sitting inside their own environment. In the US, the worst that I've ever seen, and I'll say the worst, 413 security solutions in one company. I can't even manage 413 things at any one point in time. Why could an organization do that? That's the reality of it. But the world is, if we can start to automate all these processes around it, this is where we can start to get to, and I'll call it a nirvana. But it's actually a reality. And it's not something that we'd say, how could we achieve this? I think the only real way that we can achieve that is wiping the slate clean and starting from scratch. Get to a place where we say, let's actually build this up. Because from the autonomous vehicle standpoint, many people right now have actually started to create that incrementalism. We've got adaptive cruise control. We've got all these different little features and functions. But if you want to truly create an autonomous vehicle, you build it from the ground up. We have to build the SOC the same way. This is something that all of you could start to focus on thinking about as well. How do we change the world? But flip it on its head. Why do we need a level 1 analyst to be the gatekeeper effectively to try and work out how do we escalate and triage from there? Let the machines do that. The most experienced people should be the ones that really handle the things that are going to cause material impacts to an organization. The most experienced ones are going to be the ones that help us out there. But all the experienced ones are going to be learning from, these are the key things that are critical to our own business. Because you've also got context. Because I could build a tool and you've got absolutely no idea how that would actually work inside your own environment. But you can add the context by having experienced people that are actually in there. And the other key piece is, this is not a want. Like water, it's a necessity. An autonomous SOC is something that we actually have to work and strive towards as well. This is a world that we have to get to, because this is where we can start to get to a place where I'm no longer going to be asked every single time there is a data breach, how did this happen? We should actually be able to know what happened as it's happening and do something about it in reality. Thank you. I don't know if I'm supposed to open up for any questions or anything like that, but if there's any questions? Sure.
Yeah, so CrowdStrike's Falcon Overwatch does something similar. So it, gets IOCs and things like that from all of their customers, and essentially does what you said, and that works in an incremental way. Freeing up the line one guys to do other stuff.
Yep.
So it is currently happening.
But it's a SOC manned with people. So Falcon Overwatch is no different to any other SOC that's out there right now. It's not autonomous. We want to get to a place where you don't have to have people sitting in the SOC. That's the place that we have to get to. Having a service provided by someone, that's a dime a dozen.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's a SOC. It's
a SOC. So it's manned by 45 people at any one point in time across 4 different countries.
Oh, right.
Yep.
Yeah. Cheers.
So, no worries.
Any other questions?
Yes.
I guess a big one is, as you're saying, automate the level 1 and escalate it to a point in which a human can handle. Do you see there being a company coming in the same way that all of your services are on the cloud, AWS, they all handle that? Do you see an automated SOC cloud solution, I guess? You just pass all your data off to AWS.
Yep.
They then alert it, and either they have level 2 or higher, or it goes back to your own internal SOC to handle. How do you see, the autonomous SOC in 5 years?
So I think we're probably going to have to build it for starters. If I think about what we do at Peltier Networks as an example, so we're a Fortune 500 company. We've got 12,500 employees operating in 40 different countries. Obviously, largest cybersecurity company in the world. We're probably the most targeted company in the world as well. We can only handle a certain amount at the end of the day. We have 8 people that are working 9 to 5. Not that we think that attackers go home at 5 o'clock every day, but it's one of those things that we rely on automation. We've probably automated 99.5% of all of the threats and alerts that have come through that are automated. The 8 people that we have are the ones that focus on those the 0.5%, if you want to call it that. I think where we're going to have to get to is building a capability that allows us to ingest as much as we can, which has never really been a problem for us. I think as an industry, we've actually had a digestion problem. We can't actually process and understand what's going on there, and we can't do that quick enough. I think we have to be able to process that one. And every organization that I speak to, and I'll say everyone, the majority of them are basically sitting in multi-cloud environments. On average, 2 to 3 cloud environments. Then you've also got your colos and a whole bunch of other places. So trying to work out and understand those disparate data sources and actually trying to ingest all of that and digest it is the problem that we've got right now. I think there are definitely people that are trying to head towards building out an autonomous SOC. No one's doing it in a way where they're saying, let's build it from the ground up with no people involved. Because I think when you have a mindset of this is the way that we need to build it and build it exclusively for that, as opposed to the incrementalism that we've done as an industry, I think that's the game changer itself. Nice. Yes?
If you're automating like the level 1 role,
Yep.
obviously you can start off and go level 1 and then you move to responder. Where do you see that responder talent pipeline?
So I think that at the end of the day, we're still going to get that talent and pipeline. So many organizations right now are automating or striving to at least automate level 1. At the end of the day, the pipeline's here. Many of you are probably going to go off and actually start becoming SOC analysts. It's a very common thing straight out of university to become a SOC analyst. That's where the jobs are, and that's where people are also looking for talent as well. I think learning on the job is probably where you're going to start to work out how you become very quickly a level 2, level 3 analyst. You can read all you want. You can learn all you want. I'm not saying anything bad about learning things here as well, but it's more a case of learning on the job as what's going on. But I think we need to start to understand What's the telemetry that's out there? That signal to noise ratio is something you're going to probably end up learning on the job. Learning that through a book, I think, is near impossible.
All right.
Cool.
Any more questions or?
Where do I see it? Basically helping organizations right now. So XOR is a solution that Palo Alto Networks actually has as an offering. So what we basically do is we'll basically grab any bit of information, logs, and start to add automation around that one. And that's where we're effectively saying the level 1 triage and activity. So take the example. I think the most common example that people start off with first is phishing. Every time there's an email that gets sent to, phishing email that gets sent to, let's say, myself, I would forward that off to the InfoSec team. Someone's going to actually sit down at some point in time and say, let's go through and do the triage to work at, hey, does it have an embedded URL? If it does, great, let's actually go off and check. Where is it actually going? On average, most organizations probably would spend about 17 hours a week of one FTE's time to actually go off and do that triage. That's a simple thing that you could say, let's build that as part of an automated process, and you free up 17 hours of someone's time every single week. Start to add from there. Then start to work out, Ed, what are the other things that are coming through? If I start to collect information around the HID swipe cards as well, great. Sean's actually walked in and swiped in here, but why is Sean actually logging in from a VPN from, Eastern Europe? That's actually a bit of a weird thing. Let's start to correlate that information straight away. Again, you could use automation to leverage that for you. You will need a SAW of some capability, absolutely there. If I think about what we're trying to achieve with what we're building with an autonomous SOC, it's front and center. You need to be leveraging orchestrated and automated responses, absolutely.
So thank you so much,
No,
Sean.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, a lot.